there, everybody. This is the moment you've been waiting for, especially if you are a Beatle fan. And we have about maybe 40 Beatle fans here with some of their parents. And with Arnie Ginsberg, this is Dan Donovan. How you doing, Arnie?
Okay, what a wonderful crowd of gals. Almost all gals.
I can't understand it. I can't understand it. But that's the situation. Now, here is what is going to happen. We have a very special guest today. You've heard us talk about it here on WIMX for a number of weeks now. And, of course, our Beatle press conference contest. We kind of eliminated thousands of entries, and we narrowed it down to the 25 or 30, 50 here tonight. Louise has just informed me there are 50 here, which is, I guess, about right. Well, there are a lot of people here. And we narrowed it down, and we have them all here, and they're all ready with their Beatle questions. And Louise Harrison Caldwell is here, and we might as well get our Beatle press conference off to a start right now.
Emily White, Marblehead, Mass. Do you think Ringo's marriage will affect the Beatles' popularity?
No, not at all. Not judging by all the congratulation cards I've received. Everybody seems to be very happy about it.
My name is Rebecca Martin of Cambridge. And when did George learn to play the guitar? And did he ever have music lessons?
Well, he first got a guitar when he was 14, and he is self-taught. He never ever did have music lessons. And in his own estimation, you know, he's still learning. He's still trying to really get it to master it.
Judy Gaffney, Woburn, Mass. Does George have a middle name?
No, he doesn't.
Renee Walsh, Jamaica Plain. It's obvious the Beatles can't remain together forever. Do they have any future plans? There have been rumors about a comedy team when the Beatles break up, if they do.
Well, they are a comedy team, you know.
Sheila Murphy, Concord. What did the Beatles think of the campaign for throwing confetti in Boston? You know?
Well, it certainly doesn't hurt as much as...
David Arsenault, Wakefield, Mass. Do you think George's popularity has affected his life at all?
Oh, yes, tremendously.
Jane Daly, Dorchester. Are the stories that the Beatles are supposed to write in the fan magazines, do they really write them themselves?
No.
No?
Who writes?
Well, I don't know, but somebody with a good imagination, obviously.
Norma Ross, Brockton. Did George like to sing when he was younger?
Well, I think we all did. You know, Mum used to sing a lot around the house, and we pretty well all did, yes.
Tricia McGuire, Quincy, Massachusetts. Why does John keep his family away from the public?
Well, I think just because he's pretty sensible.
That's a good answer, isn't it?
My name is Rebecca Martin, and I'm from Cambridge. Was George a poet before he became a Beatle?
Was he a what?
A poet.
Good heavens, no.
Joyce Fillmore, Lincoln, Mass. Does John Lennon really wear a wig?
A wig? No, none of them do, no.
Hi.
Valen States of Mattapan. Could you tell us a little bit about the Beatles' new movie?
All I'm sort of allowed to tell about it is that the story is a chase. The Beatles are being chased because Ringo was sent a ring by one of the fans, and this ring was originally stolen from some kind of strange religious sect in some mythical country, and the people who it belonged to originally are chasing to try and get it back, and that's as much as I can tell you about it.
Nancy Thompson of Saugus, Mass. Was it true that George almost got expelled once for wearing his slacks too tight to school?
No, that was another of these exaggerated stories, you know, that gets into the magazines.
Sumac Needham, what was your first impression of the other three Beatles?
Oh, I thought they were great, you know, great personalities and, you know, great people to know.
Linda Richardson, Somerville, Mass. Is it true that in England you finish school when you're 16? Explain the school system.
Normally you start school at 5, or, well, in my case I started at 4. And then you have an infant, what they call an infant school, you go to for a couple of years. Then a junior school, which you normally get into when you're about 8 till you're about 10. And then at 11, you do your examination to go to high school. You usually start high school at 11 and then go through to 16. And you have to do your school leaving certificate at 16. And then if you do, you can do 2 more years of specialized work in high school before you go to university, because even though you have your university entrance at 16, you have to wait until you're 18 to get into university. So that's what happens.
Did any of the Beatles take music lessons?
No. They've not done badly without, though, have they?
Mary Roger Malden. Louise, do you do much traveling with the Beatles?
Well, not with them, but I do a lot of traveling to meet Beatle fans and to try and set the record straight on some of the stories that go around about the boys.
Diane Rossignol of Quincy, and what do the Beatles think of their fans?
Pardon?
What do the Beatles think of their fans?
They think they're marvelous.
David Arsenault, Wakefield. Do all the children in England have long haircuts?
Well, not all of them, but most of them do wear their hair longer than the current style here in the United States. I think back during the war, it seems to me I remember movies like The Yearling, and those kind of movies, that the kids in this country wore their hair like that at that time. And, the style in England is pretty much like that still over there.
Linda Richardson Somerville, when did you leave England and why?
They threw me out. No, I left England in 1956 and came to live in Canada, or went to live in Canada with my husband. He was offered a job as a design engineer at a gold mine up in the north of Canada.
Dottie Harris Waltham, does John Jr. have a Beatle haircut?
Now that I don't know. I have seen pictures of him, but just when he was younger and his hair was just growing. But I don't think that John would especially, have him grow his hair that way.
Leanne and Petro Weymouth, are there any more Harrisons at home?
Yes, there's a whole bunch of us. I have 3 brothers altogether. I'm the oldest, and I have brother Harold, who's married and has 2 children. And my brother Peter was married just on January the 27th this year. And George, of course.
June Weymouth of Peabody, does Ringo think that his fans are lessening because of his marriage?
Oh, heavens no. Do you?
No.
No.
Judy Fitzgerald of Chelsea, is the next Beatle movie going to be in color?
Yes. It should be really a riot, too.
Gail Pheasant in Swampscott, how long do you think the Beatles are going to last?
Well, that's anybody's guess, but I don't think they're going to fade out in the next 6 months.
Diane Crimmins Watertown, how many guitars does George have?
He has about 7, I think, at the moment.
Thank you.
Harvey Chowder from Mattapan. And when he plays, does he usually use the 12-string guitar?
Well, it depends on the piece of music he's playing. If it's something that needs a fuller sound, then he plays his 12-string guitar. But there are different guitars give a different effect, and so he tries to use whichever one gives the best effect for that particular song.
Donna Caruso from Belmont, do you know if they're going to sell Beatles stocks in the United States like they just sold in England?
No, I think a lot of people in the United States, though, did get their brokers to buy stocks.
Renee Walsh of Jamaica Plain, what do the Beatles think of American teenagers in contrast to English teenagers?
Well, now, this is a question that's difficult for me to answer because it's what the Beatles think,
Styles and so forth.
From all that they have said to me, they think, the teenagers are pretty much the same anywhere, but of course the styles definitely are different. They think that the styles worn in England are a little more with it than over here. Now, that's just what I have heard them say.
I'm going to ask Louise a question. We were talking about teenagers. What's your observation of the difference between the teenagers in England and in this country? I think you've had a chance to see them.
Well, I think the teenagers in England stay young longer. They don't attempt to grow up quite so quickly, and they certainly don't start dating as early as they do over here.
Because they don't have cars.
Yes.
Sue McAvoy Needham, will Ringo have his hair cut by Maureen now?
Well, that I couldn't tell you.
Janet Piazza from him. Will Brian Epstein be in the new Beatles movie?
No, I don't think so. Not unless he's standing in the background, in one of the scenes, but not as a performer, no.
John Baxter, Wakefield. Do you think Ringo's voice has changed a lot since he had his tonsils?
Not at all, no.
Judy Gaffney, Woburn, Mass. If one of the Beatles fans ever write to them, do they write back?
Well, in the early days when, they weren't getting so much mail, they used to answer quite a bit of their mail themselves. But nowadays, of course, they get, I think, about an estimated 12,000 a day. So, much as they would like to be able to write back, it's just impossible, especially with all of the commitments they have. But they are handed over to secretaries to be acknowledged.
That's 500 letters every hour of the day.
Is it? It's a lot, anyway.
Mathematical Ernie Ginsberg coming up. Jolly Green Ginsberg.
I should take you with me when I go shopping.
Louise, may we ask you how many fan letters you get a day?
Oh, well, it varies. I think the most I had in one day was about 210. Usually it's getting close to 150.
Well, there is such a thing as a Louise Harrison Caldwell fan club.
Yes,
Because I am an honorary member. And
Are you?
Yes.
What's this?
I have a lot of those. Practically every day a columnist puts something like that in about Paul.
It says there have been many reports about the marital status of Beatle Paul McCartney. A communique from London just arrived states he is definitely married to Jane Asher and has been for over a year. ..
Yeah, it's just nuts. Yeah.
Right.
Becca Martin, Cambridge. What was your first impression of Patty Boyd and Jane Asher?
Well, I haven't met Jane, but I did meet Patty, and I thought she was a very, very sweet gal. Very nice.
Donna Daly Revere, do the Beatles have their hair done by a barber or a hairdresser?
Oh, a barber. Hairdresser. No, they just have it cut, wherever they happen to be when it gets long enough that they figure they should have it cut.
In one magazine I saw that they had pillow fights. They say when they're always in a hotel, they have pillow fights. It shows a picture
Now,
of
they
them.
did this one time for a lark, but they don't always do it. That would get a bit boring if you did that every day.
Pretty hard on the pillow.
All right, here's another fellow here. Hi.
David Arsenault, Wakefield. Does Ringo lose his temper as easily as he did in the movie?
No, I think he's very easygoing.
Janet Piazza from him. Is it true that none of the Beatles are allowed to look outside the window at the hotels?
It's not a case that they're not allowed to, but the police do ask them not to look out of the window because when they do, it causes such a disturbance, and kids start charging across the road and getting under the cars and so on, that, they just asked for the sake of the safety of the fans not to do it because it causes too much disturbance.
Fallon says it's Mattapan. Was George really in America before the Beatles became popular by himself to see?
Yes, he came over in September '63 to visit with us for a couple of weeks, and my brother Peter came as well at that time, over to Illinois.
Joyce Fillmore, Lincoln, Mass. Which Beatle has the longest hair?
Well, it varies, depending on which one got it cut last.
Gail Pheasant in Swampscott. Does Paul have a middle name?
Well, Paul is his middle name. His name is James Paul McCartney.
Donna Daly Revere. Is it true George had 3 black eyes by things thrown on stage?
Now, that again, I think, is one of the nutty things that's been written in magazines. Now, he may have been hit once, but I certainly have never heard about it.
Terry Haynes from West Roxbury. Is it true that Ringo has about 2,000 rings? But he does wear the 4 that I know of.
Now, this was another thing. Somebody said to him, how many rings do you have? And he just, for a joke, just said 2,769. This was printed.
Yvonne Sabine of Everett. Do the Beatles ever wish they weren't so popular and could go outside and be
yes,
walk
I
around
imagine.
and not be mobbed?
Yes.
Numerous Brockton. Is England really muggy and everything like, or...
You mean like it is in Boston
Yeah, I
today?
was going to say, let's not say too much about the weather today, boy.
It's good weather sometimes.
Well, we do get a lot of muggy weather because, of course, it's right practically smack in the middle of the ocean, But you get a fair amount of good weather over there, too.
This is Yvonne Sabine of Everett. Would George ever date a fan?
I really don't know. I'm afraid he would have to answer that question himself. It would depend on the fan.
Diane Rossignol of Quincy. And what kind of girl does George like?
Well, I know that the kind of girl he likes at the moment is Patty, so,
We have run out of time, and let's have a nice round of applause for Louise Harrison Caldwell, who kindly consented, of course, to helping set the record straight, in her words, about the Beatles. And we hope we answered your question, both on the air here, the people listening out there, and for the guys and gals here in the studio.
And now the long-awaited WHK press conference with Miss Louise Harrison Caldwell. May I introduce you, please, Miss Louise Caldwell? Mrs.? Well, I should have known you were married. I should have known you were married. A pretty gal like you, right?
Thank you.
We have so many anxious teenagers wanting to ask you various questions. We're going to start right off with WHK good guy Al James and his questionnaire. Al?
Right, Bob. I have a young lady right here.
Susie King, Brecksville High School. Mrs. Caldwell, I would like to know if John, Paul, George, and Ringo are really as close friends as all the press releases say they are.
Well, they're closer friends than some of the press releases say they are. They really are good friends and have been for many years.
Nancy Doherty from Bexhill High School. I'd like to know your first impressions of John, Paul, and Ringo when you first met them.
Well, I felt as though I'd acquired 3 more brothers.
Good answer. Would you mind standing, please? Name?
Chris Hansen from the John Marshall Interpreter. Mrs. Caldwell, were you in America when they first formed the group?
Yeah, not in America, but I was in Canada and South America.
Did George write to you and tell you
Oh,
about
yes.
Here's a reporter here from the Brush Arc Light.
Vicki Wrightson from Brush Arc Light. Mrs. Caldwell, what do you think the boys enjoy most about movie making?
I think perhaps a more ordered existence for a few weeks. You know, they have regular meals, and they're, more or less in the one spot for a longer length of time than when they're on tour.
Joe?
Yeah, I've got a gentleman here from St. Joe's. May I have your name?
I'm John Way. And Mrs. Caldwell, have you noticed any personality change in George since he's become a Beatle?
Not at all. Not at all.
That is
Thank
amazing,
you.
isn't it?
He's a little more mature, of course, than before, because he's older.
Do you collect pictures of the Beatles and of George in particular?
Got millions of them. I started a long time before everybody else here.
One of their biggest fans, huh?
Oh, yes.
Where are you, Johnny?
Oh, I was just conferring with this girl here. She has a loaded question.
Uh-oh.
And here it is.
My name's Karen Prohaska, and I go to Olmsted Falls Junior High. And I was wondering since Ringo is married now, do you think when George is married, it will hurt their popularity?
I don't think so, because it seems to me that the Beatles are justified in the pride they have in their fans. They were talking to me about this last week, and they said, our fans are not stupid. They realize that we have to marry eventually, and they realize we can't marry each and every one of them. And once they get over the, initial moment that they're a little bit disappointed we've got married, then they rally round and they really like us for our music, I think, is what they said. So I think so, too, don't you?
Yeah.
I do. I think the fans are becoming mature as the Beatles are becoming mature, so that they're both growing.
Linda Yorko from Brecksville High School. Mrs. Caldwell, who in your opinion is the most comical and the wittiest?
Well, it depends on who's in the most comical, witty mood.
Very good answer, because I think they all were.
Yes, they all are, but it depends on which mood they're in at the time.
I have a young lady that's whispering in my right ear, and she says, "Oh, I'm scared." What's your name?
Beth Caldwell from Hillside Junior High School.
Caldwell? Did you say Caldwell?
Caldwell?
Oh, hi.
You may be related.
I'd like to know how you get along with George as a brother.
Oh, just great.
Didn't you have any fights with him or anything?
No, because, I'm very old compared to George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back once again at WHK's suite, and we have a sweet Louise Harrison Caldwell, who is drinking milk and answering questions at our exciting press conference. We're getting to know all kinds of weird facts that we didn't know before about the Beatles, in particular about George and even you. Here's another question from Joe Mayer and his beauty.
I've got some charming young lady. Would you step up, please? May I have your name?
Charlotte there from Holman, Dominican. I'd like to know if you've heard about the Beatle Band here in Cleveland.
The Beatle Band?
Yes.
Oh, you mean where the mayor said he wouldn't let them in or something?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's his loss, isn't it?
Yes.
With that, we say amen. Very good.
Johnny Walters?
Yes, I have a young lady back here with a question of vital importance.
I feel like Dr. Anthony here.
Can she leave the room?
Scratch that question. Pretty good. Go ahead.
Linda Kuss from Nazareth Academy. I'd like to ask Mrs. Caldwell if George ever mentioned anything he particularly liked or disliked about being with the Beatles and traveling with them.
No, not really. They do find it hard once in a while, being sort of caged in. But other than that, they enjoy the life. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. Where's she gone? She did leave the room.
No, she just sat down.
Oh.
She just sat down.
I've got a gentleman here, Johnny. You want to stand up, please?
Yes, my name is John Hoshes. I'm from Benedictine High School. Miss Caldwell, here in Cleveland we have the mayor of Cleveland, Mayor Loker, has proclaimed a ban on rock and roll groups performing at Cleveland Public Hall. I would like to have your personal reaction to this move.
Again.
I think, did we just touch upon
Yeah, I
that,
did,
Louise?
yes, but,
Underline it.
yeah. Well, it's rather a shame, really, although I suppose that, it could cause problems sometimes if it's not handled properly, having groups But then it's really up to the promoters to see that things are carried out in a sane manner.
Louise, have the boys had any trouble like that in another city?
Oh, yes. Not being
No,
banned.
I mean banned.
No, no.
My name is Katie Schmidt from Elyria District Catholic High, and I wanted to know if George is really the individualist that everyone says he is.
Well, I think all four of the boys are very much individualists, otherwise they wouldn't have, made the impact that they have on show business.
They have your name and the school.
I'm Martha Dickelman from Cleveland Heights High School. Mrs. Caldwell, we've heard so much about the Beatles' sense of humor, and that, well, blush, that the Beatles are renowned for their sense of humor, and I wonder if you could give us some examples or tell us about your brother. I know that's on the spot.
Yeah, that's kind of a long question. But let's get to a real fast one that I thought was rather comical. This is not about George, but Ringo. But when they were having one of the first press conferences in New York, now you've probably all heard this, but this is an example of their wit. There was a very snoopy sort of a reporter woman. She was a real... Well, never mind. She was she wasn't very nice. And she asked a very long question to the boys, and the end of it was that what did they consider the greatest threat to their career, the nuclear bomb or dandruff? And immediately, without thinking, Ringo said, well, he says, I suppose really the nuclear bomb, because we've already got dandruff.
Which they haven't, incidentally.
No, but this is the kind of thing, the way they can come back on these answers.
Johnny Walters. Yes.
Yeah, there you are.
Present. I have a question from this girl right over here. Her name first, please.
Sue Philly from Fairview Park, and this summer, while the Beatles were in America on their tour, there was a rumor from that lady that predicts things, that Jean Dixon, that the Beatles plane would crash, and she said on a program broadcast on some radio in Cleveland that you would... You called her up and said that you didn't want the plane to take off if this rumor was at all true.
No. I did speak to the lady, and she told me that there was no truth in her having predicted this plane crash. I did speak to her, and she assured me that there was nothing to it. She had certainly never predicted anything like this, but I certainly hadn't said anything like that.
Had she predicted anything about the Beatles at all?
No, she said that she had not meditated on them, but all that she could see for them in the future was a great deal of success and health and happiness. She couldn't see any tragedies in their future at all.
I hope she's right.
So do I.
My turn, Big Al?
Right.
Listen, there's
go ahead.
James Scott from the Plain Dealer, teenage editor over in the corner, girls. Now, there, that's nice. Give her a hand. Welcome, Jane. Nice to have you at the conference. Now we've got a young lady here. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, no, not you. That's nice. You have the question.
Linda Kefta from Brexville. Did the Beatles really knock Ringo's nose?
Do they really what?
Knock Ringo's nose.
Golly, no, he'd knock them if they did. No, they don't. No, that was just something they wrote into the movie to give Ringo an excuse to go off and sulk for the plot of the movie, that was all.
Big Al, I've turned up another young lady. It hasn't been honest yet.
Oh,
You have your
yeah.
name?
Judy Pandy from Nazareth Academy.
All right, Judy.
Mrs. Caldwell, I once read an article that George had bought you a summer house in England.
Yeah, wasn't that a joke? No.
I have a feeling that answered that question.
It was a bigger surprise than moving to Fort
Yes,
Wayne.
just to indicate what an excellent signal our radio station has and how far it reaches. Here's a young lady from Manchester, England. What is your name?
Janice Wellington.
And what school do you attend here?
I go to Fairview Park.
Now, you have a question there, I see.
Yes, this might create a bit of a stir, but I was wondering, what do you think of the Rolling Stones?
They have quite a decent sound, but I don't care for their hairdos.
Thank you very much.
Dave Fortier, Olmsted Falls High School. Who is your favorite Beatle besides George?
Well, that's difficult to say, because it depends, again, entirely on the kind of mood they're in as to which one is the most pleased to be around. But I think Paul is the one I have talked to the most,
Pretty popular choice, I'd say. Joe Mayer?
You're trying to tell you something. Listen, can I have your name, please?
Oh, my name is Judy McCartney from Nativity, and I'd like to ask Mrs. Caldwell if she thinks that the Beatles' fame and fortune was based on luck or ability.
Oh, well, that's obvious, ability.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a young lady, another first time around. May I have your name, please, in school?
Julia Pajuda from South High School. Could you describe Liverpool?
What, in one word?
No, not one word. I mean, what you think of it, how you felt being there.
Oh, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It's a very, very friendly town. Everybody there is your mate as soon as you meet them. can sit on a bus beside somebody and they'll immediately start talking to you, and you're never a stranger there.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have down here, I'm sorry to say. Thank you very much, Louise. You've been very kind and very patient. Now, Louise. Louise will be available for questions on WHK on the Bob Friend Show for 2 hours this evening, so stay tuned to WHK.